Sir Keir Starmer will begin a tour of the UK nations with a visit to Scotland later. Our political correspondent Alicia Fitzgerald joins us. Hi, Alicia.
Hi, Callum.
Good to speak to you. So we'll get to the tour in just a moment. First of all, I want to sort of recap on how yesterday unfolded, and I think one of the more notable moments was the appointment, really, of some familiar names. So Jackie Smith and Douglas Alexander are back. Both were prominent in the cabinets of Sir Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, but they've been out of politics, sort of direct politics at least, for a number of years until now. So who are they? What will they be doing?
Absolutely. So this seems to be a bit of a common theme from Keir Starmer. It's drawing on people either outside of politics or some old familiar faces. And I think that is Keir Starmer's way of trying to show that he is a bit more flexible maybe than the past Conservative government in just picking from his initial pool of MPs. And often throughout the campaign, Keir Starmer was often compared to Tony Blair. Lots of people saying, is this going to be 97 all over again? Is he going to be the new Blair of this era? And I think clearly we can see that he's drawing a lot from Tony Blair's era. So Jackie Smith and Douglas Alexander, both very prominent figures in Blair's government. Douglas Alexander actually had multiple ministerial roles, and Jackie Smith was the former Home Secretary in that era. So definitely Keir Starmer's way of taking the successes, what he classes as the successes of Blair's government, and trying to pull them across into his administration.
One of the other notable names then, Alan Milburn, who was Sir Tony Blair's Health Secretary, to try to help reform the NHS.
Yes, him. God, I forgot about him as well. There's been so many that happened yesterday.
Yeah,
and it's clear as well that the NHS is definitely going to be one of Keir Starmer's main priorities. Wes Streeting, within hours of being appointed Secretary of State for Health, said that he'd already been on the phone to junior doctors, and that was definitely one of the key priorities. So again, drawing from Blair's government, trying to take the good parts of that, or what Keir Starmer classes as those, and move them over to his administration, and heed some of their old advice for when things allegedly, according to all the polls, were actually probably a bit better than they are now.
Right, speaking then of Sir Tony Blair, he is on the front page of the Sunday Times today because he's got some advice for Sir Keir Starmer, guiding the new Prime Minister on what's required. He's kind of got three... he seems to be really going for the idea of taking Reform UK on. And that's an interesting kind of element to what Sir Tony Blair's advice is on things like immigration and law and order, and wokeism gets a mention as well.
It is, and I think obviously people always assume, especially with those 5 reform seats, all of them were taken from the Conservatives. So I think it would be a fair assumption to say that reform have mainly eaten up Conservative votes. But it's clear here that Tony Blair is warning Keir Starmer that also some of these will have been Labour supporters, and that you can't just leave the reform battle to the Conservative benches, especially when there are now so few Conservative MPs. And the topics that Tony Blair is warning about are things that would traditionally be more under a more rightward leaning government's priorities. So illegal migration, for example. And obviously we've heard that word wokeism. And I'm sure lots of listeners right now might roll their eyes and say, what does this mean? What is this word? But I think what Keir Starmer is doing is warning what Tony Blair is doing is warning Keir Starmer that he can't shy away from these difficult topics, and that the growth of populism and the rise of the reform vote is definitely going to be something that he has to be aware of and make a priority.
We also then had this news conference from Sir Keir Starmer yesterday, so we were previewing that with you yesterday, Alicia. In terms of what he delivered at that, just talk us through some of the key announcements on things like, or some of the key statements perhaps, rather than announcements, statements from Sir Keir Starmer on things like prisons, on the contaminated blood scandal, and I suppose the overall mood, attitude, approach of Sir Keir Starmer as well. That was kind of coming through, I think, at the news conference.
Absolutely. I think the mood actually was perhaps the most notable thing. I think he came in, he was very cheerful, looked very relaxed, and it's quite a different image to what we've been seeing for the past few months of Rishi Sunak delivering press conferences. Clearly the backdrop for Sunak has been quite difficult for some time, whereas Keir Starmer was coming in. He's obviously in a very positive and confident place at the moment, so he looked very relaxed and quite happy to be there. I'm not sure how long that novelty will last. It might get quite difficult quite soon for him, but he definitely seemed pretty confident in his message, and it was clear that his strategy was very much get in and then prove you're confident competence once you are in, and lots of questions were asked about, the really low vote share at this election, and he very much shrugged those off. He just said, I've won, I've got a majority of seats, and now is my time to actually prove to people that I am a competent prime minister. And he obviously spoke about all of the key things that he wants to do over the next few weeks. Sorting out the prison issue was a huge one. He didn't really say exactly what the plan was there, but he said it was a priority, along with the NHS and along with all of the main things you'd expect a government to have to grapple with in their first few weeks. So he's definitely talking the talk, and then the next few weeks are going to be the question of whether he actually delivers.
Yeah, indeed. There's a picture in the Sunday Times of, well, what's referred to as the top table, so the cabinet meeting. The first one took place yesterday, and immediately under it is plan for high-intensity theatres and weekend work to mend broken NHS in the Sunday Times today. Wes Streeting will set out a 10-year plan. I think that feels like that's going to be quite a lot of this first week, doesn't it? Perhaps announcements of plans, of reviews, of the strategies, and perhaps that's a way to calm I think the real desire for delivery is to sort of say, right, here's the plan, now you're going to need to give us X amount of time to actually implement it.
Absolutely. And he stressed that during his press conference yesterday. He said there are certain things that he can do immediately. Wes Streeting can pick up the phone and he can start negotiating with junior doctors. But what you can't do is build a prison overnight. I think that's what he said, referring to prisons. So he's obviously clear of the fact that the public are going to pressure him to really deliver and deliver quickly, because lots of the public are frustrated. They're annoyed. They feel like things haven't changed in a long time. But at the same time, you have to be realistic, and not everything can happen overnight. So he's got to really walk that careful line between making things happen but not doing things too quickly and rushing through.
And the PM goes on tour today, so looking ahead to what happens through Sunday, he is going to visit Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales.
Yes, he is. And that was another key part of his speech, actually. He was talking about making the relationship between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland a bit better, and making the devolved administrations all work a bit more smoothly. So you can tell he's definitely trying to hit the ground running with that. He's heading around for a full UK tour today to speak to the leaders of each of the administrations and try and just establish himself as the new Prime Minister and make that a good working relationship.
Alicia, really good to speak to you. Thank you very much. We will catch you through the morning. That's political correspondent Alicia Fitzgerald. I think this UK Nations tour is a fascinating one. John Swinney, the First Minister of Scotland, has kind of already hinted at the idea that since they're shellacking in the general election, the SNP, in the last couple of days, that they need to be more open to kind of working more constructively with the Westminster government. And so Keir Starmer dropping in for a visit today. I wonder what will emerge from that. And then on to Northern Ireland and to Wales as well, to sort of smooth over, I guess, this idea of being the Prime Minister of the UK, which is made up of constituent parts. And then tomorrow, I believe it's tomorrow, he'll be chatting to all the mayors, the metro mayors of any party from around England as well. Just an interesting direction for Sir Keir Starmer to be setting out on.